Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be building the fuel system for the LS swapped S10. I'm going to show you what hoses, fittings, filters, and other components that I used. So let's get into it. Okay guys, you may have seen from previous episodes, we talked about I'm going to reuse my factory fuel tank. I did put a new fuel pump assembly with the Walbro 255 pump, along with the new pickup and all that we bought off eBay. I showed you all that. If you're not familiar with that, there's a video to that. I'll put the link to the description below. I am going to be using all Vibrant Performance fittings, as well as Vibrant Performance PTFE braided hose. You can see that's the part numbers. But again, I always put the links to everything in the description, so I'll put it down below. I did order all of my fittings and my fuel hose from Summit. I didn't order anything off Amazon. I've heard horror stories about some of these fuel hoses leaking and causing fires, so it kind of scared me. I did order from the last video I showed you I changed over to the new body style, or the TBSS intake, which is going to require me to run the fuel pressure regulator / fuel filter. So I ordered this from Speedway, and again, the reason I did was because it has the brazed or the welded ends that I think is not going to leak. The other components that you buy, you have to snap on the lines or screw them on, and I've heard horror stories about those leaking as well. Again, this thing right here is probably twice the price, but in my opinion, if it doesn't leak, it's worth it. The only thing I did order off Amazon is this Evil Energy 30 micron fuel filter. I took it apart. It's stainless steel on the inside, aluminum construction. It looks pretty robust. Not really worried so much about this fuel filter. Plus, when you compare the cost of this to the other Aeromotive and Edelbrock and Russell filters, this one is a third of the cost. So I think it's going to work just fine. So we're going to use that. I am going to show you guys how to put together the PTFE fittings with the ends. I've never done it before. So I'm going to feel my way through that. And I have elected to use a set of cable cutters to cut the hose with rather than the cutoff wheel. And the reason is I don't like the idea of cutting this with a cutoff wheel and all those little shards of stainless steel getting in here. I know you can blow it out, but I'm just kind of overprotective of my fuel system when I do that. I know this crushes it, but we're going to give it a try and see how it works out. I'm going to tape the ends and get it all done up. So what I want to do is start here. I put 245s on here, and I'm going to run those inside the frame rail, and we're going to go under the truck and mock up all of the locations for the fuel fittings or the fuel filters and get those bolted on. And then when I get all of this mocked up, we're going to take all this back out, put it in the floor, and I'm actually going to use this setup to crank the LS engine. So let's get started cutting hoses and getting all the measurements and getting this bolted up. And I'll show you how we put our first fittings together, or how I'm going to do it. And we'll get them routed and clamped in real nicely, and I'll show you what that looks like when we're finished. So stick around. So the first thing I'm going to do, guys, I ordered 20 feet of the PTFE fuel line. I'm going to snake it through the chassis frame right here and figure out and locate where I want my fuel filter is the first component in the circuit. So I'm going to locate my fuel filter. We're going to cut a piece of line, and then we'll get the ends put on and get it all coupled up. So I'm going to put you on time lapse. We'll get that done, and when we get ready to make put the 45s in the straights on the end of the hose, I'll take you over to the vise, get you set up, and show you how I do it. All right, guys, I got you on the truck with me, and I'm a little bit frustrated because in my mind, I wanted to put this 3 micron on the frame rail here, and then I wanted to put my fuel filter / regulator on the frame with it. And as you can see, your factory vent line and your brake line is all in the way. I did come up with a fix, and I'm going to show you what I did. But if you'll notice these 2 existing holes right here, this is where I'm going to mount this. And sometimes you got to think a little outside the box. So what I did is, if you can see up under here, I drilled a hole. instead of mounting it like this, there's nothing wrong with mounting it up here out of the way. So let me get this complete. What I did, I'll show you. I made a bracket the same pattern as the bottom of this, and I am going to sandwich it on the top of the frame, bolt my filter to it to give it some added support, because I didn't want to weld anything on the frame. But let me get all this bolted up. I'll show you how it turned out. Okay guys, this is how I did it. If you can see up in there, I made me a piece of flat bar. It's got a bolt through it. I extended it out to the other side of this flange to stabilize it. Then you can see I bolted my filter pressure regulator here, and that's giving me enough room to make me a short piece of hose to put to the pressure side, and then return side from back here can go right behind my fuel filter back up to my tank. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hop out from under here. I'm going to make up my lines from here to here, and the return back, and then the pressure line to the back side of this filter. And then I'm going to show you, I'm going to run my pressure line that's going to come off the filter pressure regulator. I'm going to run it through the frame, and there's a hole where the parking brake cable comes through. There's a perfect amount of space up there that I'm going to pull it through. And when I get it mocked up, again, I'm going to take all this back apart, and we're going to crank the engine with all this assembled in the floor. So let me start making up hoses, and we'll get you back on the shop bench and show you how I'm going to put these AN fittings together. Hey guys, one other quick thing I wanted to show you before we start making hoses. If you'll notice, I added a piece of flat bar so that this would not spin. So when you clamp it on, if you had one piece of flat bar, it would allow it to spin. So what I did is I added a piece. I laid this top piece across and marked it, and matched my holes up. Now you can see that I've got a flat piece. I just tack welded it on there. You can just bolt it, but basically the way it's going to go on there is it's going to set up against the frame rail. If I can get this bolt back into this hole. Now you can see when you bolt it down tight, this will not allow your filter to spin. I just wanted to show you that before we get the hoses made. Okay guys, we're ready to make our first fuel line. And what I did is I put a piece of tape around this to keep it from burring. You can see that's got stainless wire mesh on the inside. But I wanted to show you guys something. I told you when we started I was going to use these cable cutters because I didn't like the idea of using a cutoff wheel and getting grinding debris down in my hose. Well, it may be because these are cheap Harbor Freight. I mean, they are sharp and they can cut wire. But I want to show you firsthand what happens when you cut with these cable cutters. I'm going to cut on this tape. I'm going to make sure I've got enough hose on both sides. At first, it feels like it's going to go through really smooth and straight. But it doesn't matter how I try to cut this stuff. That is what happens. Even if I try to go on the other side, which I'm not going to use this, I'm going to have to cut it off. But this is the worst one yet. I have had them at least cut them. I have had these cutters at least cut it to where there's just a little bit hanging. But I can't. And like I said, it may be these cheap Harbor Freight cable cutters. I don't know. If I had bought another set, I might have better luck. But I'm not going to spend 30 bucks on a set of cable cutters that I don't ever use. But you can see how that left the hose. So what I'm going to do now is put me a piece of tape around here. I'm going to straighten this back up with the cutoff wheel and I'm going to continually blow this out with air so that it stays clean. So let me get this straightened up. We'll cut our first length of hose and put our ends on it, and I'll show you how that turns out. So hang on just 1 second. Okay guys, our first run of hose here is going to be 44 inches. It's going to be our return hose on the return side, and I'm going to use a 45 off the fuel tank and a straight on the fuel pressure regulator / filter. I have taped my ends where I'm going to cut them. So I've got a piece of tape, I've already marked it, but I'm going to pull my tape measure back out here, remark my 44-inch line, and I'm going to cut it with the cutoff saw, or the cutoff wheel rather, on the grinder. Kind of hard to do. So about the midways of that tape mark. And on these, it's not so critical that they are dead on, because I've got room to wiggle. There's one hose that's going to go on this particular setup that's got to be dead on. So maybe a little trial and error on that. So we'll see. So I'm going to mark this. We will get this cut. Oh, sorry guys. We'll get this cut, and I will cut you back on when we're ready to put the ends on. Okay guys, we are going to blow this out with compressed air. And if you notice, I've still got my tape on here. And what that's going to help us to do is we're going to take this apart, and there is a tapered ferrule in here. And it goes, the tapered end goes down inside, in between the stainless steel braid and the Teflon liner. And then this taper on this particular fitting here, when it pushes it back up onto this fitting, it swells it out and tightens it up as it pulls it in. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this end and we're going to fit it over this paper tape. And that tape on there also aids in getting this on there. If you don't, I practiced cutting this a couple of times before I started the video. This stainless steel will flare out, and it makes it difficult to get this on there. So this paper is a little trick that I saw another YouTuber show me. And then after that, we can take this off. And as you can see, make sure you get all your tape off. Evidently my cutoff wheel embedded it into the stainless mesh just a little bit. So as you can see, that's a pretty nice, you can see how flat it is. Now we're going to take this little small screwdriver. They make a tool, but it's about 40 bucks that fits in between this liner and this stainless steel. But I'm going to take and I'm going to pull this out. I hope you can see what I'm doing. Once we get it flared out all the way around, try not to prise against this plastic. You don't want to prise against it. You want to pull away from it. You just want to pull away from it. Once you get it pulled out enough, you're going to take your ferrule, or your olive as they call it, and that olive is going to go around that sleeve. Now the next thing we want to do is, if you can see inside of there, there's a little lip, and you want that Teflon or that liner to be flush with that lip, and you want it to be square. You don't want there to be any gaps in there. So I'm going to push this on here as square as I possibly can. check it as I go. And man, that looks perfect. I don't know how well you can see down inside of there, but inside of there, all the way around is touching the top of that olive. Plus, you can look at it. That one may be just a little off, but you can look at it, and if you can see how square or how level it is to the line, that'll tell you if you've got a good flush fitting or olive. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of, you can get WD-40, or this is just some air tool oil. I'm going to put a little drop of oil around it and put a little drop of oil on the threads as well, just to help it out a little bit. Got something else I want to show you guys. I'm wiping my hands on this little towel here. A buddy of mine showed me these. You can get them at Walmart, and they are disposable tear-off microfiber towels. They're about 15 bucks, but man, these things are handy. I mean, cleaning windshields, detailing cars, and it's a pretty good size roll. I never wash my microfiber towels anyway. By the time I get done using them for wax and your dash products, in Alabama we always call it Armor All. It doesn't matter what it is, it's all Armor All. But I never keep them and wash them anyway. But I just thought I'd show you guys that. That's pretty handy. So getting back to our fitting, you want to make sure that when you slide this on there, we got a little bit of oil in there, and this should just slide right in there. That's what I've seen. So, and it did. See how well that slid in there. And then this will slide right up on there, and you want to make sure that as you slide this on there that you hold pressure on this hose when you tighten this up. And I'm going to get this started by hand. To make sure that we're not cross-threaded or it doesn't feel weird or anything. So I'll get it to where you can see it. You probably can't see my hands. Probably better put it in the vise. You can probably see it easier too. I put some tape in my vise to try to keep from marring the fittings. I didn't buy the aluminum vise jaws, and I'm not using the aluminum AN wrench. I'm thinking that I can probably manage. So I'm pushing up on this hose, and I'm going to push down on this fitting until we can get it started. And that started. So I've got some tape on here. It's a little boogered up. Let's put some more tape on here. That was one thing I never understood. The guys that use, even the guys that use the AN wrenches that are aluminum, they put tape on here. So once I put tape on here, how does that fitting know if this is aluminum or steel? Is it just because it's softer? I don't know. But I really don't care either. So we're going to hold this fitting and make sure that it's in there good and started good. And that doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't feel good to me. Yeah, that didn't feel good. So let's try that again. Actually, that thread looked kind of off. So let's make sure that it's okay. That fitting doesn't feel good, guys. So let me go over here and get this other fitting. Okay, guys. Make sure you start these by hand. I just ruined a $25 fitting. It felt like it was going in, and when I took it out, these are aluminum. They're very soft, and it chewed the threads up. So I had to go get another fitting, and now I'm going to have to order one because I only bought 2 of these 45s. As you can imagine, at $25 a piece, I'm not going to stockpile them. So once you get it started by hand, you're going to want to tighten it up. And if you want, you can line up the notches in the fitting itself. And you're supposed to leave just a small gap in between right here. And that's what I did. I lined these up. You don't have to. But I'm going to put the straight on this end. We're going to get this installed on the truck. And then I'll show you what it looks like underneath the truck, and we'll end out the video. So stay tuned. Okay, guys. Before I put this last hose on the truck, I want to give you the most important piece of advice I can give you that I have learned. First of all, when you're making a piece that has to fit a certain dimension, do not couple up these 2 fittings. If you leave this off, you can fit it up and make sure your hose is going to fit between 2 points before you put these connections together. Because when you put these connections together, you crush this olive to the point to where it can't be reused. I learned that. I had to order another olive because I messed one up. So this hose goes in between my filter and my filter pressure regulator, and I'll show you under the truck when I take you for a tour. But I made 2 of these, and that's how I crushed one of these. So I went ahead and put this end on because one end is going to be permanent. But the other end, if I get it in there and it doesn't fit like I want, I can always cut it off. Now, obviously, if you've made the line too short to start with, you're out if you've put this on there. That would be the advice I would give you, not to couple the other end. Just put your connectors on, put your olives in, push your fittings on there, put the hose in the space you're trying to fit it in, see if it fits. If it doesn't fit, you can always trim it off. If it doesn't fit and you made your hose too short, you can always cut a new piece of hose. But once you connect this, you have ruined this olive. So that's what I wanted to tell you guys. Before I put this on the truck, I wanted to show you. Let me go stick this on. We'll give you the I'll give you the tour of the fuel lines, and we'll end out the video. Okay, let's go take a quick tour of the truck. I'll show you what I did, and we'll end the video. So let's go start with the fuel tank. My next goal, guys, is to take the fuel tank off, the lines off. I'm gonna couple everything together, tighten everything up. I'm gonna put this gas tank in the floor, and I'm gonna connect it to the LS engine, and that way I can test all my fuel connections, and I'm gonna try to test run the engine on the engine stand. I hope that's gonna be my next video. So let's crawl under the truck here and show you what we have. So as you can see, I've got my 30 micron filter, and I can't get you a good shot of what's up in here, but you can see my fuel lines going up. I've got the fuel feed coming from the fuel tank, the pressure side, going over to the fuel pressure filter / regulator. Then my return goes back to tank, and right here is going to be my fuel pressure going to my engine. Now, this was the line I told you I had to have a specific dimension because I was trying to keep this filter, and I don't have it pushed up far enough, but I've got it measured to where this is in the center of this bracket because I'm a little bit OCD about stuff. That's why I was telling you, when you measure for these hoses that have a specific dimension, do not tighten these up. Just leave them off, stick them in, stick this end into your olive or your ferrule, and then see what you got to have to make up the distance. That way you won't waste a bunch of money on fittings and olives and that kind of thing. Now, I did show you at the first of the video, there is my fuel pressure filter / regulator on the frame rail, and I plan to run my fuel pressure line up into the frame rail. And I'm going to show you what I run into when I got to working on this. So basically, I want to run that fuel pressure line through this hole right here. Well, it's all great and fine if I'm doing it this way, but when you get this end on here, it will not fit. So I've got two options. I can either disconnect my parking brake cable, pull this back out, put my fuel line in, connect this, which is a little bit of a pain, but that's okay. I think what I'm going to do is take this out and enlarge this hole big enough and put me a grommet to protect the edge, big enough to get this fitting through there, because I want to run my fuel line up around the firewall, coming up over the top of the brake booster, connect it to the back of the firewall, and make the turn into the engine right here. And that keeps the method to my madness is to keep that fuel line away from the exhaust that's going to be right in here. Because I've seen a lot of fuel lines that go down under here, and my concern is if they're not clamped well or they get hot, you know, things could happen. So I am going to run mine up and around the top of the brake booster, attach it to the firewall up here, and keep all the fuel away from this hot exhaust. That is my thought process anyway. With all that being said, guys, we're going to end out the video. This video wasn't supposed to be a how to manufacture fuel lines, put AN fittings on, but I learned a lot. Remember, do not tighten your fittings. I used a pair of metal snips to snip the little wire. If you remember in the video, I ruined that 45-degree fit, and I actually got the threads fixed on it, and it will work with a new olive. But what happened, one of those little stainless threads got up, or particles got up in the threads and caused me to kind of cross-thread it a little bit, and it messed it up. So if you get you a pair of little metal snips and trim off some of those loose stray wires, stainless steel wires, coating, it'll make it a lot smoother process of putting it together. I learned that, and I thought I'd pass it on to you guys. So when you cut that, make sure you cut those things smooth, and if there's any sticking out, fraying out all over the place, trim them back to where they're really smooth. That's what got in my threads and caused me to almost mess up that $25 fitting. So I got it fixed. I'm going to order a new ferrule and put it in the shelf for inventory. So with all that being said, guys, if you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. If you are a subscriber, thanks for coming back. Hit that like button. Keep the comments coming, guys. The rear end video, I got a lot of comments. I thank you guys for that. I enjoy interacting with you guys. And with all that being said, we're going to end out this video. So we'll catch you in the next episode.